Yeah, we will be talking about that West Indies women's victory at the T20 World Cup a little bit later on in the show, but we start with the most intriguing test series around town, where India will be hoping to continue asserting themselves over Australia in the second test in Delhi. The hosts will resume day 2 on 21 without loss. That's 242 behind Australia's first innings. 263. Mohammad Shami spearheaded India's attack on day 1, taking 4 for 60 in Australia's first innings. Usman Khawaja top scored for the Baggy Greens with 81, while Peter Hanscom contributed 72 not out. Captain Rohit Sharma on 13 and KL Rahul on 4 will take the middle when play resumes at 11 p.m. in Jamaica. That's 12 midnight for the rest of the Caribbean. Of course, live coverage of the second test and the entire series is being shown on SportsMax. Mariah, Lance, India once again putting together a quality bowling performance, and once again the Australian batsmen struggling in Indian conditions.
Yeah, and you know, right now, Ricardo, when I look at how the test is poised, I want to think that it can go in any of the team's favour, because we know it only takes a couple of balls to change the result of any particular match. But yeah, of course, India being very, very dominant. Kudos to Mohammad Shami, who was able to pick up 4 wickets, and Ravindra Ashwin, of course, getting... For me, he was extremely clinical with the ball, and if you look at his bowling figures, you can see how economical he was as well. So for me, he posed as a massive threat, and when he started to bowl, they had no way that the Aussies was going to get away.
Yeah, India in a position of command, but the Aussies have done better for sure than they did in the first test. In the Nagpur test, they made scores of 177 and 91 all out, so this 200 plus total for them suggests an improvement in their batting performance. Always impressive for me to see some of the Aussie middle order batsmen who may not be big name batsmen like Peter Hanscom did last night, getting this fighting 72 not out. And it's part of the reason why the Aussies are so strong in international cricket. They have so many players in the batting department, from 1 to 11 sometimes, because even Pat Cummins got a valuable knock last night as well. That I think last night was a representation of the Aussie determination, because the first test, to be honest, was an embarrassment for them. And while they may still lose the second test, I don't expect them to lose in the manner that they lost the first test. So India are in a position of control, but this is an intriguingly poised test match, and at midnight Eastern Caribbean tonight, 11 o'clock in Jamaica, SportsMax fans will have an opportunity to see what unfolds on day 2.
Can Rohit Sharma bat out?
Yeah, that's going to be critical, what happens in the first hour, first session of day 2, to see if India can set up a really big total here to put Australia under even more pressure. But before I even get to that, I want to talk a little bit about Mohammad Shami, because I think he is such an underrated fast bowler. This is a player who has done so well for India over time, and here was another situation last night, surrounded by a number of quality spinners who are all bowling so well, but Shami again just producing impeccable line and length consistently, always at the batsman, always troubling the batsman, always forcing the batsmen to play. And it was just another quality bowling performance last night. And it got me thinking, when you speak about India's test side, you rarely ever hear a discussion around Mohammad Shami and his quality. And I think he's just so underrated.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, you know, from a bowling standpoint, in all formats, Jasprit Bumrah, who isn't playing here, is a much more hallowed name than Mohammad Shami. But I agree with you, Ricardo, that Shami is a very, very outstanding bowler. Wasn't he one of the SportsMax class moments from last week? Yes. That it was an outswinging delivery. He's a high quality bowler. And I've said on the show many, many times, Mariah and Ricardo, that while this current India team isn't as strong as the dominant West Indies teams of the 1970s and 80s, it to me mirrors the proliferation of quality on their roster and of players available to them. Because I think that India can put a second 11 team out there, whether white ball cricket or red ball cricket, and still be a potent force.
Yeah.
That's to me a statement of how many outstanding players they have to choose from, which is what happened when the West Indies were dominant. There were many players in the West Indies who couldn't get into the West Indies team in the 70s and 80s who would be star players for any other team outside of the West Indies. And I think India are currently boasting that kind of roster. I will repeat, though, that I'm not saying that they are as good as the West Indies teams of the dominant years, because they aren't as dominant as the West Indies were. Yeah. In fact, this team isn't particularly dominant. Yeah. They're just strong and among the best in the world. The West Indies were undisputed best in the world.
And just to add to what he was saying, Ravindra Jadeja, he didn't have one of his best bowling spells. He was going 3.23 per over. He was getting hit for fours, but still he was better than, the quality that we would see from our West Indian bowlers. And eventually he racked up 3 wickets, and, his bowling figures turned out to look good.
Yeah, definitely wasn't the best day for Jadeja. Wasn't the best day either. Well, it hasn't been the best period for David Warner. And fortunate, I think, to get into the Australia side for this second test. Now, David Warner averages just over 22 in India. He has the lowest average, the worst average of any opening batsman who has played 10 test matches or more in India. He's not coming off a particularly good summer. He did have 1 double century, but outside of that, he's been relatively poor for the last couple of years. And now there are serious questions about how much longer David Warner will remain in the Australia side. In fact, the feeling is if Cameron Green was available for the second test, then there's a strong possibility that Travis Head might have been pushed up the order to open, and then David Warner would not have played this second test. And you have to feel that it would be a justified decision. And I can't help but wonder if it's very close to the end for this great left-handed opener.
Yeah, and Australia does, Moran and Ricardo, have a track record of fast-tracking some of their big names out of international cricket. They're not afraid to tell, top flight players that, well, we need to make room for a younger player. Because the point Ricardo just made, in the Boxing Day test, David Warner had a double hundred against the South Africans. So that's less than 2 months ago. Yes, he hasn't been outstanding since then.
But that was his only triple-figure score in 2 years.
Well, I guess so, yeah. But, from a standpoint of meriting your place in the team, sometimes selectors will count a double hundred, even though it was spotty in the sense of his sequence of scores, as something that would retain some attractiveness in your account.
Yeah, like they're basically judging him on, what he can do previous. It's like how you were picking Stephanie Taylor. You said you would pick her based on her track record, remember?
Yeah, especially if it's a team like the West Indies where the quality otherwise does not exist.
Right.
Are you suggesting that that's not the same with Australia?
It's not. It really isn't.
I am suggesting that is not the same
I
with
agree
Australia.
with you. I just wanted you to say.
And especially because he's been poor in India.
Yes.
So you now have to wonder, because you're playing in India, because he's been struggling for quite a while, and because he's always struggled in India, then maybe. If he doesn't make runs in the second innings, then I think he doesn't play in the third test.
And there are 2 more test matches. It's a 4-test series.
Yeah, very much so. All right, that's it for India, Australia. Live coverage of the second day on SportsMax. That will be at 11 p.m. Jamaica time, 12 midnight in the rest of the Caribbean. Be sure to tune in. It promises to be a cracker of a test match.
Stay with SportsMax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news and entertainment.